All right, friends. Today is quite special for me because I'm talking to one of my closest grad school friends, Kelly. It's so exciting. She runs a training and learning design company now after spending years in higher ed. That's how we met. And then she moved on to the nonprofit sector. So she's got a lot to talk about, just about pivots and all that kind of stuff. But what I really do love about Kelly is that she's someone who has really figured out how to actually connect people to purpose. And ever since I've known her, that's kind of been her mission. And so it's really kind of cool to see that come to life in her business, which, I think it's something that we all say we want to do, but few of us actually know how to pull that off. So hopefully we can get some nuggets from Kelly here. So a little bit of background on Kelly. You started out training college students to be civic leaders. That was
Yeah.
the intent. Moved on to nonprofits where you were building volunteer programs and working with kind of that realm. And then you did the thing that most people only fantasize about. You left and started your own consulting business. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because Kelly, you now work with everyone from entry level staff to executives. So anybody that's listening, I'm sure can take something from today. And I just want to welcome you to the Balanced Badass podcast, friend.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to
Yes.
be on this is just so cool and talk about watching people do cool things. I mean, can you imagine back when we were in grad school that either of us would be doing this? Like,
No,
okay.
no. Little grad school us had all
Yeah.
these hopes and dreams for higher
So
ed,
many hopes and
and
dreams.
here we are. I'm going to start with my icebreaker question per usual. And that is, what is something that you're loving in your life right now, Kelly?
Ooh, in true higher ed fashion, right? Starting with an
Yeah,
icebreaker
got
question.
to. You
Um,
can pry the icebreakers out of my cold, dead
that's
hands.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. Gosh, what am I loving in life right now? Because this is top of mind for me right now, I am loving being able to take more what I call adventures.
Mm,
So part of that is being able to travel international. That's something that my husband and I decided years ago we wanted to do once a year. And outside of a little break, because of a little thing called COVID, we've been
little
able
thing.
to do that. And we're going to Ireland this year. So we're doing that in a couple of months. And so I'm excited about that. But we also have really started to get better about embracing like the smaller adventures, right? So doing
Mm,
things local or going to Comic Cons or going to Ren fairs, nerdy things. Going to,
love it.
of course, right? So yeah, just embracing adventures. That's been my and doing things that are a little scary and exciting. Like I'm gonna be on my undergrad's alumni council.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I get to do that for the first time. So embracing new things, embracing new adventures.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm loving.
Well, I want to start by talking about your own career journey because, like I alluded to, like you've made two pretty significant pivots. You've
Hmm.
kind of went from higher ed into nonprofit, which I'm sure there's obviously similarities and stuff too, but still quite a different pivot. And then the biggest of them all, from nonprofit to building your own business and entrepreneurship. So I want you to walk me through kind of that first pivot. Like, what was the moment that you realized that higher ed maybe wasn't going to be your forever home?
Yeah, gosh, I certainly thought it was going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I hit a point without going through the whole entire story because, people don't want to hear all of that. But without going through all of it, um, talking about burnout, man, I hit burnout and I hit it hard. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm tired or oh, this is exhausting or oh, this is a lot. Like I was crying at work. I was crying at home. I was so unhappy that I was unhappy at home. And luckily, I have a partner who finally looked at me one day and was like, something's got to change. Like, you are not okay. Um, and as we tend to do, I was just going to power through. Like, it's going to get better. We're going to hit a point where it's going to get better. It's going to let up. It's going to get whatever. But now we also know that that's not always the case, right? So I had to do some pretty serious soul searching, which is really the case for both of these pivots. Ended up doing some deep soul searching to realize what was going on first, right? Like, why do I feel this way? Why am I so miserable? Because this is what I wanted to do. I love my students, I love my staff, I love my team. This is so great. What I do is so important. Like, why do I not want to do it anymore? And then recognize, okay, here's what's going on. This is why this isn't working. I also realized I didn't want to be a vice president of student affairs,
Preach.
right? Like, I thought, right, like I went to grad school thinking like, okay, I'll work for a while, I'll go back, I'll get my doctorate, I'll become a VP, it'll be great. Like, no, thank you. Like, honestly, kudos to the people who do it, right? It's needed, it's
Fact.
necessary. Absolutely still believe in the work. No, thank you. It is not my jam. And so I started having to figure out, like, okay, well, if I don't do this, then what? Right.
Mhm.
And gosh, it was so long ago now. I can't really remember how I eventually made it to nonprofit, but I was very fortunate to because there are a lot of transferable skills, right? And
Mhm.
that's something that we don't talk about enough in higher ed. For any higher ed
Yes.
folks who might be listening, your skills do transfer to other things. Just gonna drop that in there.
Mhm.
But I did. I had a lot of good transferable skills, and so I was able to pivot from higher education, doing leadership development, doing community service, civic engagement, right? Coaching, all of this stuff, and translate that into my first nonprofit job, which was volunteer management and volunteer training and volunteer development, which eventually led me to doing prevention work in the community and prevention education, and took that and did that at another agency and then did that at another agency, right? And really builds upon that skill set. And so yeah, that's why I left though, honestly, to begin with. It was just I hit that burnout rock and I hit it hard and really had to figure out what was next.
Yeah. I feel what you were saying about the transferable skills, and I'm even seeing this, like, obviously, we know from just our lens of higher ed and how it's almost like this is all or nothing kind of situation, right? But I'm seeing this with folks that I talk to regularly that it's like I've been on this career trajectory for so long
Hmm.
that it's almost like this kind of sunk cost fallacy, right? Like I've put
Right.
so much time, effort into this for
Yeah.
us, like degrees.
Yep.
Um, because I mean, I even started a freaking doctorate and then I was like, what the heck am I doing? I don't want to do this.
Do
So it was
this.
very much the same. Like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. Um, but I hear that where it's so hard to see outside of that bubble or
Yeah.
outside of that lane. But it is very critical to be able to separate the skill set from the industry, no
Yeah.
matter what industry you're in, and trying to look at it objectively a little bit more to see, okay, where can these skills fit into a different industry and
Hmm.
apply in a different way and all that kind of stuff. And that's why, like, I talk about with folks like the way I do analogies is like, okay, let's say you're in your lane, you're walking down the street. Okay. This is like our little higher ed lane. Do, 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 do. Well, maybe we take those skills and we go across the street. So it's more of an adjacent
Yeah.
move, not necessarily a wild and crazy move, right? Um, but then you can also expand on that and do a more kind of bold pivot where you go into a different neighborhood. So you didn't just cross the street, but you went to a
Right.
different neighborhood, you know? And then if you're feeling really crazy, there's a wild card option where you just go to a different state
Just pack
or
up and fly
country,
out.
whatever,
Yeah.
depending on you just get the heck out. So there's all kinds of options with the skill set that you have. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Well, and that was even
Because
true
I
when
think a
I
lot of
left the
us lose that.
nonprofit. Yeah, it was even true when I left nonprofit. I started, even having done it once before, I still fell back into that mindset, right? After doing nonprofit for so many years, I was like, well, I don't know how to do anything else. I can't go do something else. I can't, right? But you can.
Mhm.
You can. And sometimes you maybe, you need someone like you or other folks to kind of walk along with you to help you uncover that. But you can. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you can. You can do it.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to too, like when you're burnt out to that point, I mean, one of the keystone markers of burnout is where you lose your sense of confidence
Yeah.
and self-efficacy. So
When you can't
it's even
see
hard to
outside
see
of that
that.
bubble, yeah, you can't
Yeah.
see outside of it. And that's why I say like I'm so fortunate that I had a partner, right, who looked at me and
Yes.
said, something's not working. Because honestly, if it hadn't been for that, I probably would have stuck around a lot longer than I should have.
Mhm. Yeah.
And honestly, I had done the same thing for him a few years
Yeah.
before, so that also helped, but it's always easier to see it in somebody else than it is to see it in yourself, so
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think, anyone listening that if they're surrounded by somebody that's going through it, don't be afraid to call it
Yeah,
out
absolutely.
because sometimes
Have
that's
that
the
hard
like
conversation.
switch.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about the shift now from nonprofit or, just like steady 9 to 5 work
That part.
to, you know, to going out on your own. Cause a lot of people, we dream of this, we dream of leaving our jobs and just kind of starting our own thing, but it's a scary move and very
Mhm.
few actually do it. So what was the thing for you that like really finally pushed you from maybe someday I'll do this to actually launching your business, Kelly Wuest Consulting?
Alright, so totally gonna be honest, this was never my dream.
Oh.
I'm just gonna put that out there. I honestly never thought this is what I was gonna do next.
Mm.
Um, I even had people ask me when I started to job search, when I realized I didn't wanna stay where I was, when I realized it was time to kind of figure out what was next. And I was talking to some friends, and I talked to some coaches, and I talked to some and I had a couple of people here, even my therapist, who was like, "Well, why don't you just go work for yourself?" And I'm like, "No, I don't wanna do that. To do that. That's too much work. That's too much
Hard.
effort." Right, which is true, but also.
Fair.
And so, but I was just like, no, I don't, no, no, no. I thought when I decided I wanted to leave the nonprofit sector, I got to a point again where I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't know that I want to do this anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the for-profit world and I'm just going to make money. And
And
haha.
here you are on
And
the
here I
opposite.
am not doing that. No. So
Just kidding.
I but that's what I thought. I was like, you know what? I've done higher ed, I've done nonprofit. Like I'm just gonna get a job that's a job, right? Like something
Mhm.
that I don't have to get overly invested in, something that doesn't have to be my whole identity, my whole self, because that's something else that I went through, right? Is going through that struggle, losing a job and while I was in the nonprofit sector and having to struggle with who am I if I'm not my job, which is a whole other conversation we could have. But
Yes.
um and so yeah, I thought I was going to go do corporate for profit something. And so I started looking at like higher ed tech, some other things that colleagues and friends of ours have gone into, talked to a lot of folks about that, got really excited about it. But doing that, I got directed to a resume writer and career coach who I hired her just to help me again translate my skills, right? I was like, okay, help me. How do I say everything that I've done in a way that's going to speak to for profit, right? Because I know they want numbers and they want all this stuff that I don't know how to talk about. So hired her, worked with her, and in that process, even though I had started applying to jobs, like right when I got my resume back, da 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 da, probably job search for about 6 months. Um, But that going through that process with her, this is why I say having somebody outside of yourself to help you recognize these things is so important.
Yeah.
That was my aha moment. Like once I let go of this, like, no, this is the next step, this is the next plan, this is the next thing, and looked at what I've done over the last 20 plus years, right? In my career, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a skill set. right? Like I have
Skills.
something that I can use and that matters and that I can use to still do good things. Like I don't have to abandon this idea of wanting to still be connected to purpose. I can just do it differently. And so I talked to some friends like you, like some other folks who have gone out and done this on their own and found a lot of encouragement, right? And found there's a lot of different ways. Now I will say that's the other piece. There's a lot of information out there and you can get on information
Yeah.
overload and it's overwhelming and can seem insurmountable because you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. But once you filter out all the noise, it's doable, right? And so
Hmm.
I started kind of building little by little for a little while. To say, I was like, okay, do I want to do this? Do I think this is a good idea? And just the further I got into building, I realized like how exciting this was. And yes, it's terrifying, right? Because it's a whole, like you said, I mean, I don't have that steady paycheck, right? I don't have that, you know, my husband and I use a budgeting app. Like we love to budget our money and to know when our money's coming in and where our money is going. And now I don't have that steady income, which is
Harder
scary.
to budget when you don't know
A
what you
little
got.
scarier. But the budgeting also does help with that. So
Yes.
again, different story for a different day. But going through all of that and then starting to build and then realizing how excited I was starting to get at the prospect of doing what I do now, I finally ripped off the band-aid and said, that's it. I'm going to do this. Right. And
Hmm.
I loved what I was doing. Actually, my first client was the job that I left because I wanted to help keep, that momentum going that I had started helping to build there. And I gave them probably like 2 months notice because I just didn't want to leave them in a lurch because that's, again, who we
That's
are
who you are.
and what we do. But then I did it, and it really did take having people again outside of me. And the fun part of that story too is that my therapist looked at me and said, when I told her, this is what I'm going to do now, she goes, hold on. And she pulls out my file folder and she goes, I have my receipts. Here's where I told you a year ago. This was a
Yeah.
good idea. And I'm like, and this is why I
Yeah.
pay you as my therapist. Thanks. But I didn't think that's what I wanted to do, right? I really
Yeah.
didn't. And I'm so grateful now though that I found this path. Um,
Hmm.
because yeah, it's I love it. Even with all the hard stuff.
Yeah. I know, at least speaking from my own experience, like I too, I had always thought I had like a itch, if you will, to like, oh, maybe someday I could start something, but I didn't know what that something was going to be. And, very similarly, talk to like tons of people, which I think there is a threshold of where you talk to too many people and you get too many
Yes.
opinions and then you're very confused.
Correct.
And I did that. So I got very confused because I had a ton of people telling me what they think I should do with my time. Because, to one aspect, it's like people see my strengths and they're like, hey, you're really good at XYZ. Like, you should do this. Like, I had a ton of people because this was like right after I had planned our wedding. So I had a ton of people who were like, you were phenomenal at planning your wedding, which, not to toot my own horn, but damn skippy I was. Like,
Because
it
you
was
were in
very well
higher ed
executed.
and you know how
Well,
to run
yeah,
events.
100%. I know
Yeah.
how to put on an event. So, like, there we go. So everybody's like, go into event planning. And I'm like, yeah, but like, this was fun for me because it was my wedding. I don't want to do this for other people.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, but you're like really organized. So maybe you can focus on like productivity or whatever. And that's kind of the route that I had started on. And then, like, kind of similarly, like, just kind of fell into this when I realized, okay, I experienced burnout several times. I had kind of my own method for getting out of it. I didn't have anyone aside from my therapist, who is not like a burnout specialist by any means, but like she helped me through it. Um, but I didn't have anybody who could like hold my hand through the
Mhm.
process. And I knew that that could be helpful. So that's kind of how I ended up doing it. But it's all about, I think, taking the messy action too. Like, I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time.
Yeah,
You just figure it out
that
as you
part.
go.
I love that. Messy action. That's it. And
Mhm.
as someone who is a perfectionist, right? I want
Yeah.
it to be right before I do it, before I unleash it, before I try it. You can't you can't do it. And I think that was probably the best piece of advice I got from anyone in doing this is
Mhm.
they said, don't go in. You don't even need a business plan yet. Just
Right.
establish what you need to establish legally, right? Get your accounts, get everything set up, and then just start doing because you're going to muddle through and then figure out like what you did. You're going to eventually figure out what's the right place for you. And that was the best piece of advice I was ever given because yeah, I was like, oh no, I have to do this first, and I have to do this first. And again, all that noise, right? I have to get all these things in line and in order, and I want it to be perfect, and I want this really polished look and this brand. And it's like nobody cares about any of that.
Mhm.
They care about you and the work that you do and the value that you bring. So figure that part out first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we were talking about this before we started recording, like, I spent a lot of time focused on the website, and then I was like, "I don't even know what I'm saying on the website. Why
Yeah.
am I spending so much time on the website?" Like, let's figure out the messaging and the problem I'm solving first,
Yep.
and that takes experimentation
Yeah.
and really talking to people and working out your messaging and all that kind of stuff, which, like, is an ever evolving process,
Yeah.
but you've got to start there before you can, like, come up with the collateral to support whatever you're doing.
Right. Right. Well, and that's
But
the other
it
piece.
does. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say that's the other piece too, is the ever evolving part, right? Like you're never
Yeah.
done.
No.
It's never just, okay, this is my brand and this is it, right? This is what I offer, this is how I do it, and that's it. Because if you aren't evolving with your industry, then you're, yeah, it might work for a while, but it's not going to work forever. So owning that it's going to be different as you
Yeah.
go.
Well, we even talked about the other day when we were talking about, like, our pricing and
Hmm.
how, like, figuring that out, we have some lessons learned from earlier on and, like, how we wanna do things a little differently and what worked and maybe what didn't work, and that's, like, all a part of the process, and I think that's probably why folks like the 2 of us who are really dedicated to, like, learning
Hmm.
and growing and evolving probably do thrive in this kind of environment because it does require that growth mindset.
That's a good point. I've never really thought of it that way, but yeah, it's yeah, you have to be willing to just absorb and figure out what works for you and yeah, consistently learn and grow and move and change. And I think that's what's so exciting about this. I
Mhm.
think again, we have that education. I mean, like that part's never going to go away, right? Being an educator at heart and being a lifelong learner and all of those buzzwords and
Mhm.
things, but they're true. You should learn something new every day. And doing this, you don't have a choice but to learn something new
You have
every
to.
day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with making the mistakes too,
Yeah.
and I think coming back to that perfectionist mindset, that's where I have struggled as well, like, "Oh, crap." But now I'm much better at being like, "Okay, you know what? It's a mistake. We're
Yep.
gonna learn and move on." The nice thing is when you're a solopreneur, the mistake is usually only affecting you. So
That part.
that's helpful.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
All right, well let's pivot a little bit. This has been so good so far, but I do want to get into, like, your actual work and what you do.
Yeah.
So you do training and education now, really primarily focused, kind of working with different agencies and
Mhm.
organizations. So you kind of see from an outside perspective, like you've done it from the inside perspective, but now you see from the outside kind of what these cultures look like and can feel like. And I'm curious, what are the signs that you look for that tell you that an organization is actually, like, ready to invest in quality training for its people versus just kind of checking a box and moving on?
That's a good question. Because yeah, it is a lot of too many people see training as a checkbox, right? Like we think that
Mhm.
whatever the problem is, whether it's volunteer retention or it's staff development or it's community engagement, like whatever the problem is, we think, okay, if we just make a training then and put together a PowerPoint that's got some bullet points on it that's what we want people to learn, they're going to learn it and we can fix it.
If
Spoiler
only.
alert, that doesn't work. That's where I come in, right? Because it has to be about so much more than that. And so what I have found working with different organizations and even in my experience, being inside of an organization, there has to be a willingness to get introspective and to ask some really hard questions and to get back to purpose, right? Like, what is it? What are you really trying to accomplish through this training or through this program or through this educational event, right? Like I'm helping with a conference right now. Like what's the purpose of this conference? Like what do you really want people to walk away with? Just because you've done it every year doesn't necessarily make it good, right? Like that's another thing that has to evolve. Training and education has to evolve with your people, with your constituents. So helping people kind of walk through like, okay, what's the purpose? And then how do we bring people into that purpose? Like that's the piece that I have found that's been missing in a lot of places is it's not just about, okay, you want to volunteer with us, here's a skill set that you need to volunteer with us. Go forth and do. That's
Mhm.
part of it, but it also has to be why do you want to volunteer with us? As a volunteer, here's what you contribute to this agency. As a volunteer, here's what you're doing to make a difference in your community. Here's how we appreciate you. Here's how we recognize you. Here's how you're now part of this bigger vision, because that's what leads to retention, right? And it's the same thing with staff development. If I'm just saying, oh, we need to be better at communication skills, and we just do a day long training about communication skills, and then that's it. Okay, well, everybody goes back to work and nobody's going to apply what they've
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah.
But if
Nothing's going to change really.
nothing, I mean, let's be honest, nothing's going to change. So instead, it has to be okay, we're going to do a communication skills training because this is a value of ours and we want everybody to come along in that. And then after the training, this is how we're going to live that in our work, right? So there has to be these bigger pieces, but the agency and the leadership have to be willing to do that. So, if a client or a potential client comes to me and just says like, "Hey, can you just build a training?" I'm going to ask them why, right? Like, what is it that you want to get out of it? What's the goal? What do you want people to learn? How does this matter? Why does this matter? And that if they don't, I'm willing to help them work through that. But if they're not ready to go through that, then this may not be the best fit yet. I do believe everybody can get to that point, but they may just not be ready yet. Because it's really about how does this fit into the vision, the mission, the values of the agency, and how are you bringing people in to walk along in that with you? And if you're not ready to
Yeah.
tackle that, then we got to get you to that point first.
Yeah. You're going to keep checking the boxes at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love what you said about bringing people into because, it builds that sense of ownership,
Mm-hmm.
um, gives a little more sense of belonging to the bigger purpose too, right? And I think when I think of a perspective of burnout, which like obviously my lens comes from kind of this corporate mindset, right? Of burnout at work, but you can apply it to volunteer, experiences too,
Oh, yeah.
because you can certainly experience burnout in that way.
Because here's a spoiler
And I
alert:
think
volunteers are unpaid employees.
100%, yeah,
That's another thing that people tend to
I
misunderstand.
don't
So
like.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, but I think about this concept of bringing people in because a lot of times burnout stemming from this disconnect of feeling appreciated and recognized and having the adequate resources. I
Yep.
always bring this up, you're going to probably laugh, but our good old trusty challenge and support theory for folks that aren't in higher ed, it's a student development theory. It's very self explanatory. Whenever you provide challenge, you need to provide enough support. Very basic, right? I feel like I just earned my master's degree again.
You did.
However, um, it's a very basic concept that a lot of organizations are lacking at
Hmm.
this point. So it's not just for students, it is for humans at all levels. And I think being able to bring them in to understand what are their needs, what are their like you said, like what are their motivations and those kind of things, because that
Yeah.
then gives you the scaffolding to provide the right kind of support for the challenge that you're kind of pushing them to do.
Right. Well, and I joke with folks, but I'm like, I could always bring it back to adult learning theory.
Yeah.
Right? If we really want to earn our master's degrees today, like we could really go there, but but that's really what it is. Like if you think about any kind of adult learning theory, and there are lots of arguments about whether or not that's still relevant. I think it still is. It's just how we apply it looks a little bit different nowadays. Because it all comes back to pulling them into that purpose and building that trust, right? Like that's another kind of piece to this is how do we build that trust with them so that they do understand why this matters, why this is important, why they should engage in it, and what they're going to get out of it. Because that's the other thing too is we all want to get whether we admit it or not,
We're humans.
right? Like we want to get something out of it. So what's the
Yeah.
skill that we're learning? Why does this matter to me? What am I going to do with this after I have this experience, whatever that experience is? So yeah, there's I could get on a whole soapbox about how to make training good. That's not what we're here to talk about. But yeah, that's really what it is it comes down to organizations and leadership being willing to embrace that and dig into that deeper than they've probably ever dug into it before.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, now you kind of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about your pivot. But I want to dig into this a little bit more. So now that you are running your own business, how has your relationship with work changed? Like, do you feel like are you more or less at risk of burning yourself out than when you had a boss and had the traditional
Mhm.
kind of setting?
To be determined now.
I think fair.
uh, I mean, less. I mean, we'll be honest, less. And I think part of that's because kind of what you said, right? Like I now have ownership over what works and what doesn't,
Mhm,
right? And if I make a mistake, then it's my mistake.
mhm.
And that's okay. And there's going to be mistakes, but I get to own those in a way that's different than when I worked for other people. Which is same for the success too, right? Like I get to own that, which is something that on a personal level I've always worked on, right? Like owning I did this and I did this well, and being able to say that with confidence, um, and not just, oh, well, it's just the work, or oh, well, it was just what I had to do, or oh, well, I got lucky, or whatever
Yeah.
it was. Now that's all gone, right? Like it's just me and I have to own it, good or bad. Like I have to own it. And being able to do both of those things, I think has been eye-opening for me, in finding what my new relationship with work looks like because I think I remember my first job in higher ed. I heard from a colleague who I really respected, still do, and she had done this session about there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's just work-life integration. Because some
Oh,
days it's
Lord.
this, and some days it's this, and some days it's more balanced one way or the other. And of course, at the time, I'm like, yeah, because in
Yeah.
higher ed, that's what we did.
Yep. We ate it up.
We ate up and it did. It became our identity, right? And it became everything. Like my whole friend group were the people that I worked with. right? Like we talked on Facebook, we hung out, I didn't have people outside of higher education. And I learned a lot of lessons through that because that was part of the burnout part, right? Is that I had no identity outside of that job. While I made better boundaries in nonprofit, I still very much it became my identity of who I was, right? And so I was, and I know I talked a little bit about this is when I lost a job abruptly. I had to really struggle with that, and that was hard. And I really had to start to look at myself and say like, okay, I am not my job, right? Like I have a whole life and a whole existence outside of work, and I need to learn how to embrace that. Fast forward, okay, well, now I am my job.
Ironic.
Like in a lot of ways, like literally I am my job. But I also get to own what that looks like, right? And I get to figure out, I get to structure that in a way that I never could before. And I get to make the space and the time for other things and to have a life. And at the end of the day, like I can shut my laptop and walk away and that's okay. Or if I need to do a little bit of work on the weekends, which I never would have used to have done because that's a boundary and I can't do that. And that's giving up free time. No, it's okay. I took my laptop to a roller derby tournament a few weeks ago because I just had some stuff
That's
that I
called
needed.
balance.
That's called balance. I had some stuff that I needed to get done, right? And that's okay. And I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel weird about it. I knew that this was going to help me be more productive later and give me the balance that I needed later in my week to be able to still have time to go do what I needed to do outside of work, right? So hopefully, I'm less at risk, right, of burning myself
Yeah,
out
hopefully.
because that's the goal, right? Like that's the dream.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I think part of it too is you've done the work leading up to that, right? Like
right.
you've recognized kind of the patterns with the help obviously of
Mm-hmm.
the partner and friends and all that, but you've done the work now to kind of know, okay, what might be some of the red flags or even yellow flags that may be coming up that I need
Yeah.
to be aware of. Cuz I know like for me, when I first started, it was very funny. I had like structured my calendar like it was my 8 to 5.
Yeah.
Like
Same.
nothing had really changed, which was interesting because I had nothing even to put on the calendar when I
Uh-huh.
first started. So like I don't know what the hell I was scheduling. And now that I have been doing this for a while and actually have things on the calendar, I kind of do need that structure a little bit more.
Right.
So we're kind of going back to that, but it was funny how I just fell into that habit because it was just what was comfortable. But
Yeah.
then that also was what burnt me out in the first place.
Yep. I did the exact same thing. I was like, all right, I can set up my laptop and I was like, all right, my 7:30 to 4:30, like that's gonna be my window. I'm not gonna work on the weekends. Like, that's not the point. Okay, that's silly. But it
Yeah.
also means that, I get to spend my morning doing this, right? Like I
Hmm.
get to talk to people who didn't have the capacity or the time to do before. And
Hmm.
that's been one of the best parts of all of this is being able to network and to reconnect, with people and catch up with people and see what's going on and not even in a here's what I'm doing kind of way, but just to genuinely reconnect with people and to have the space to do that, to go to coffee, to go to lunch, to get online, whatever it is. Um, and then I make the space to then get the work done and I get to get the work done in my time,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not looking at the clock anymore. I was in the beginning. I was like, no, I have to clock
Old
8 hours
habits
a
die
day.
hard.
They do. And then it's like, no, I don't. I don't have to do that. If the work's done, it's done.
Hmm. Yeah.
And if it's not,
Yeah.
it's not, right? Like yeah.
I talked to someone the other day and she was talking about the guilt that she was feeling like she runs her own business and how she's like, I just like dread the mornings. Like I get up and I like feel guilty because I can't get started with like my work day. But then like in the evening time, once her kids have settled and her partner is doing whatever, that's when she's like in her zone and she like can get like a good solid 4 hours of work. And I had to challenge her on this. I'm like, what makes you think that you have to do work in the morning? If that's not what's working for you now in this season of life,
Right.
then shift that guilt. Like that, you don't need to be guilty for that.
Right.
Like it's it, and I think it's just so ingrained because we get so used to that, like 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever mindset that like
Well, because we
that's
were
the only time
told,
that you
right? Like
work.
that's what we're supposed to do. We were supposed to go to college. We were supposed to get a job. We're
Mhm.
supposed to blah 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 blah. Blah. But I like what you said about in this season of life. That's the other piece that I've had to embrace too, right? Is I've always considered myself a morning person. I was always the first one in the office. I was always getting stuff done before anybody else even walked in and got their first cup of coffee, right? Like that was just who I was. And in a lot of ways, that is still who I am. I do still like getting up and starting my day early. But you know what? I don't have to. Like I get up and I make my coffee and I get out my laptop and I start looking at emails and stuff, but I'm not necessarily digging into the work right then and there first thing in the morning, right? Because if I do, which is what I did in the beginning, I get exhausted by that. And so
Yeah.
in this season of life, I don't have to be that person anymore. 10 years
Hmm.
from now, maybe I will go back to doing that, but who knows, right? But like I like that you said that in this season of life, right? It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I had to make that adjustment myself because, I too, morning person. And I was functioning well for the first little bit with my job or with my business kind of functioning that way. But then had some health issues, little blood clot, pulmonary embolism thing kind of knocked me out, and then
NBD.
knee surgery and, whatever. But that like literally changed like the physiology in my body
Right.
to the point where I couldn't function in the morning. So I had to shift. Like there are times where in whatever season of life you're going to have to make accommodations and shifting. And now that I'm out of that and kind of coming back to whatever this season of life holds, I'm getting back into more of my routine and those kind of
Mhm.
things. And it's being okay and giving yourself grace with that. And I think that that's important to recognize, even if you are in that 8 to 5 kind of setting. Like, how can you structure your day within
Yeah.
those hours to be able to work a little bit better with your kind of natural energy patterns and all that jazz too. So
Yeah.
now, while we're on this topic of work-life balance, which that is an episode in and of itself.
Uh-huh.
But I always end these episodes asking my guest, how do you define being a balanced badass in your own life? Since this is the Balanced Badass podcast.
First of all, I'm gonna start saying I'm a balanced badass like all the
Hell
time
yeah,
now. Like I love
do
that.
it.
I love
I
it.
want to make shirts,
Yeah, you should. I would buy one. Absolutely. You need to trademark whatever it is
whatever.
we need to make that happen. I want a water bottle that says it.
We'll work on merch.
Yeah. I know a guy. No. So, gosh, being a balanced badass. I think for me, it means owning my time and how I choose to use it. I I started this year, I did this intention thing. I don't do resolutions or, anything like that. But I started 2026 really kind of doing some grounding, right? And some intention and what I ended up deciding that this year was going to be for me was releasing that which does not serve me. Now that's a hard thing to do. But
Yeah.
that's
Easier said than done.
definitely easier said than done. But for me, that's part of it, right? Owning my time and how I choose to use it. Part of that is figuring out where I want to spend my time, but part of that is also figuring out where I don't want to spend my time
Hmm.
and being okay with that,
Yeah.
right? And letting the things go that no longer serve me or that aren't working for me in this season of life. Like
Hmm.
it's okay. And yeah, I think that's really what it is looking at what's the capacity that I have and how do I choose to use that? Because, I could just say, oh, well, being balanced is I get to travel and I get to do this, that, and the third outside of work, which is true. Don't get me wrong. That is part of it, right? Like I do want to be able to travel and I want to be able to go do other things outside of the work day. But it's really, again, I took my laptop to roller derby tournament. I chose to do that and I own that decision. It was the right thing for me to do. It helped me be balanced. It helped me be a balanced badass. I'm actually, fun story, just to kind of end this on a funny note, I am taking my work to my hair appointment this week.
Love it.
I messaged my friend who is my hairdresser as well, and I said, "Hey, I have a meeting. Can I just bring my laptop and work at the back of the salon when we're done? So we'll have time to make it home." And she's like, "Hell yeah, you can." I'm like, "Cool. See you Friday." And that's okay, right? And like so owning that, owning how I want to do this work and how I want to use my time because we're only here for so long, right? And we can't keep waiting on the one day, which is why we travel international once a year. We don't want to wait until the one day. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me, that's what it is. Being a balanced badass is owning my time and how I use it.
All right. Well, we are at time, but this has been so great. Thank you so much, friend. Really
You,
appreciate you being here.
anytime. We could just
Yeah,
drop all the wisdom.
we can. We could do this on a regular series. Um, Kelly, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your work or just kind of follow along on your journey?
Yeah. So, well, as we said, I do have a website, but maybe not the best place to get to me. But kellywestconsulting.com. Just remember that West is spelled Wuest. It looks fancy when it's not. But LinkedIn it really is a great place to find me. I'm very active there, connected with a lot of folks through there. Um, Stay engaged with a lot of different people there. So yeah, just look up Kelly West on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find again with that unique last name. But that's a great place to find me.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to link them in the show notes and everything. So, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, friend.
Yeah, this was great. And for folks listening, if you got any kind of value from this conversation, the best thing that you can do is share it. Send it to maybe someone who's thinking about a career change or someone who's trying to build better training at their organization, or really honestly, just someone who needs to hear that making any kind of big move is possible. And until next time, make good choices, friend.